Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Great topic for you today. Let's do it. Redditors share some of their creepiest real-life experiences, looking to see what happened. Please remember to like, share, hype, and subscribe. I was just walking home one night when I felt I sensed someone behind me feeling. So I casually turn around, and there's this little girl standing 5 meters away from me, soaked in mud or something, wearing nothing. My heart stopped for a few seconds, as I wasn't expecting anyone to be there. Anyway, I slowly asked her as calmly as I could if she was okay. She then squealed, jumped back a few meters, and ran into some bushes nearby. To be honest, I was already freaked out by this point, but also quite worried about this child, so I walked over to the bushes instead of a little girl. I found a dead cat with 2 weak kittens sleeping next to it. I was 16 and working at an ice cream store all alone late at night. It was the beginning of March in Canada, so the ground was covered in a thick layer of snow. I got a phone call. "I can see you," a man's voice said eerily. I looked around in a panic. The store had huge glass windows on all sides. I could see nobody in the darkness. I cringed in shock. The man began to vividly describe how he planned to arm me. I was terrified, and as soon as the shock wore off, which seemed like ages because I heard part of the sickening description, I hung up the phone. It was disgusting. I was hysterical. I rushed to all the doors and locked them. Then I hid behind a counter with the phone. I was crying. I immediately called my boss and told him what happened. I asked him if I should call the police. I know, dumb move. I should have just called them. I was shocked by his answer. He said, "It was a prank. Open the store. That man was probably joking. Go back to work." What a dick. He wasn't even making money because it was -15 and nobody was coming to the store, but he wanted me to endanger myself by opening up some creep and had been threatening me? I called my dad, who was furious. He came within 5 minutes. I closed the store and he took me home. Needless to say, I never went back to work there again and never spoke to my old boss again. Most terrifying thing ever. And I learned that some people just don't give a shit about your safety. Edited. Removed one of the gross things he said. Internet doesn't need more ick. I was down at the beach with my mother and my little brothers. I was about 16 at the time and they were about 5 and 3. We decided to go to the pool with some girl I just met. My 5-year-old brother had to go to the bathroom, so I walked him into the bathroom. I decided to make sure the other didn't pee in the pool, so I turned around to get him. The girl I was with was busy laying in the sun with her iPod on. I looked around and couldn't find my brother. It was the scariest and most horrifying thing I've ever seen, to look into the pool and see him writhing at the bottom while she just sat there. My blood turned ice cold and I ran over and looked down and saw his eyes staring back up at me. I dove in and got him. I'm still to this day haunted by this in my nightmares. Needless to say, I'm a flight instructor, not full-time anymore, and I had a student with me in a Piper Arrow 4-place retractable single, and a Lycoming crankshaft decided to break up while we were training on a high-performance, low-altitude maneuver called 8s on Plions, which I've never liked. It was violent and loud as the engine ripped itself apart. I was in the right seat as the instructor, and we were shaking so bad, and oh man, the noise, that I really thought the engine was going to rip off the mounts and fall away. I could hardly reach the fuel mixture to shut down what was left of the engine. We were shaking so bad. We landed in a farm field where the farmer offered us cold beers. It was almost 100 that day, and that beer looked like the best beer ever. But by then, the sheriff was driving up, and so we passed on the beer. But that wasn't close to my biggest pucker factor flight. Later, when I was flying a light twin for a local company, we penetrated some massively turbulent convective air in a storm at night in IMC, Instrument Meteorological Conditions, 16 miles out over the Pacific, trying to join the instrument approach to our airport. The rain was so hard, I thought we might lose the windshield. The props were roaring in the rain, and we kept hitting our heads on the side windows of the roof. For the first time in my life, I really had this strong sense we would not survive. My altitude ranged from plus minus 1,000 feet in what seemed an instant, and we rolled plus or minus 80 degrees just as fast. When we were on final, my crab on the center line was about 60 degrees because of the crosswind. That night at the hotel, we had several beers. I had read about pilots who penetrated such storms and didn't survive, and I thought I would never do that, but it happened so easily. We checked the weather and the forecast was just for low overcast with stable high winds aloft, but calm on the surface. Oh, and I did row the Grand Canyon Colorado River in 1983 during those summer floods when the water was outrageously high and almost overtopped Glen Canyon Dam. Before flying, that was my high point of oh shit. Oh, I also had a nighttime electrical failure and visual conditions teaching a private pilot a night cross-country, but that was just instructive. Wait, now that I think of it, I've had more than my share of those moments. Maybe it's my karma. Not me, but my parents. This was 29 or so years ago, and my mom was pregnant with my oldest sister. Mom and Dad were heading to the hospital for a Pregger's checkup. Mom was at 35 weeks. Whilst driving there, my dad inadvertently cut off a trucker. This trucker got pissed as shit and called up his trucker buddies to come help F with my dad. So now my dad is being boxed in on the highway between 4 semis with a very pregnant woman freaking out beside him. Driving starts to get very dangerous. So he pulls over but stays in the car while the truckers, who also pulled over, get out and start banging on the car, screaming obscenities and threatening my mom and dad. Dad kept his cool, however, and managed to point out that his wife was pregnant and they were heading to the hospital. The truckers backed off after that, especially because I think they thought my mom was actually in labor, but pretty much they both almost got the shit beat out of them. Road rage really is a dangerous thing. I understand that everyone wants to get where they need to go right away as fast as they can, but just remember that in that car that might have cut you off or maybe didn't see you, that's just a person. Maybe some people have negative views and ill intent, but I don't know. I think the vast majority of people are just trying to get to where they're going safely and they're not trying to raise hell anywhere. So anyway, just think about the other person when you can. I was about 12 at the time, babysitting my little sister who was around 8. My parents were out for the evening at the church, setting up for some event, as I recall. I remember it around 8 or 9 at night, plenty dark out. My sister and I were playing in the unfinished part of the basement. And the Midwest, that meant that part of the basement was mostly underground with just the storm windows at ground level. This is when shit got weird. I hear the garage door upstairs open and 2 distinct pairs of footsteps walk into the house. They did not belong to my parents. Being familiar with not only the sound of my parents, but also the sounds of the floorboards creaking above our heads, I knew people were in the house. I quickly shushed my sister, looking up, trying to figure out what to do. The closest phone was upstairs where the footsteps were. I knew better than to call out, 2 small girls home alone. My only concern was getting my sister out safely. The footsteps tread back and forth. I assumed they were turning out the lights we had left on upstairs. I could hear 2 men's voices, not enough to make out words, but I distinctly heard 2 men. As soon as my sister saw I was panicked, she began to freak out, crying and whatnot. The footsteps immediately stopped. I slapped my hand around my sister's mouth and picked her up under one arm and ran up and out of the unfinished part of the basement. To get to the bottom level sliding glass door, we had to pass the stairs that led from the upper level, where the men were, to the basement where we were. After a moment of silence, I heard booming footsteps. I could only assume they heard my sister and were headed toward us. Running with every bit of I'm gonna die adrenaline, I heard the thundering sound of them coming down the stairs behind us, just as I got to the sliding glass door. I threw it open, shoved my sister out, and screamed for her to run for help. I tripped out soon after her. I could feel them right behind me. I had clearly heard them damn near falling down the stairs, huge booming footsteps. I fully expected to get grabbed. My sister, now screaming bloody murder, had attracted the attention of our neighbors. I turned around, no one. They were right behind me. I heard them. I knew they were there. Nowhere they could have gone. Needless to say, the cops were called. My parents rushed home. No sign of entry at all. All the upstairs doors were locked. Garage door was shut. Nothing missing. Nothing out of place. I still have no idea what happened that day. Definitely one of the more terrifying experiences of my life. My mom used to commute from southeastern Pennsylvania to Baltimore 5 days a week, about 3 hours of driving a day. One time, late at night, she saw the flashing lights behind her. While confused because she wasn't speeding or anything, she pulled over. She immediately noticed that the car wasn't a Crown Vic or any standard-looking police car, and thus rolled the window down only an inch. The cop was dressed in blues but got offered no badge. She asked to see a badge or proof of ID, and he just got angry and screamed for her to roll her window down. She still refused, and at this point he yelled that he was going to call for backup and she was going to jail for non-compliance. She replied that calling for backup would be a great idea at this point and continued to wait. He fumed another 10 minutes until finally getting back in his car and speeding off without further warning. She called 911 from her corded car phone, I know, right? And they said they'd had reports of someone posing as an officer trying to lure women out of their cars. Holy shit. I was having a party one night in my apartment in Japan, about 10 stories up. I was out on the balcony, seated on the railing with my hands on a clothesline that were strung near the ceiling. I had a good buzz going and I was talking to a girl. When forgetting where I was, I leaned back, putting all my weight on the clothesline. The line snapped, I pitched backwards over the balcony, railing into the blackness, and the girl screamed. At this point, the adrenaline kicked in and I somehow twisted and flipped around and was able to grab the bottom of the balcony with one hand while my body slammed into the side of the building. From the point of view of anyone on the balcony, it appeared I had fallen to my death, but I managed to hang on and climb back up and over the railing where the shocked girl was now sobbing, while the rest of the party had crowded around to see what had happened. My arm hurt for a few weeks after that. I no longer sit on railings with a precipice. I don't know if this is the scariest, but it was certainly my most adrenaline pumped. So I used to play this really stupid driving game back when gas prices weren't so terrible. Back when I lived in the LA Orange County area. Essentially, late at night, my friends and I would follow people in our car just to see how long it would take them to figure it out and to see if we could get them to play along. Yes, I know this was stupid on both accounts. We had no reason or right to probably scare people like that. Anyway, one night we decided to follow somebody wherever they went, even if it was on one of LA's many freeways. For those of you who don't live in LA, it's not uncommon for people to drive from one end to the other using 5 or 6 different freeways. So we tag our first mark and begin following him. He jumped on I-5 freeway and we follow him from the middle of Orange County to where I-5, the 10 and the 110 or 101, can't remember, where he gets off at a street called Soto. For those of you unfamiliar with Soto or that area of Los Angeles, this is not a nice area to be in. Anyways, this guy pulls into some donut shop and does whatever. We didn't really feel like waiting around, so we immediately found a new mark in that area. Bad idea. Now, I feel like I should mention at this point that we're doing this in a black Ford Explorer with tinted windows, so we probably look pretty intimidating. So we follow this new mark for maybe 2 minutes before he makes a right. He then makes an immediate left into a neighborhood, not a nice one. He then makes another immediate left, heading back in the direction of the original street that we turned right off of. This is a little weird, but we didn't think anything of it. He then makes another immediate left onto the original street. At this point, we know something is fucking wrong. Nobody makes 3 left turns just for funsies. No more than 10 seconds after we each had our own oh shit epiphany, did the car immediately flip a U-turn, and the guy stuck his head out the window with a rather large pistol. He then attempted to back up and block us from escaping. Needless to say, my friend driving slammed on the gas pedal to the nearest street and raced down Soto toward 10 freeway, speeding at upwards of 100 miles per hour. Now, I don't know who this gentleman was, but he looked like a gangster of some sort, and he had the meanest fucking look I've ever seen on his face. My guess is he thought we were a rival gang or some such thing. Anyway, stupid game, do not recommend. We never played it again. I came home late one night sober. My mom heard the motorbike. She opened the door for me. She looked really weird and I couldn't put my finger on it. After entering the house, I saw her turn slowly right into her bedroom, but at the same time, she walked down the corridor straight ahead. There were 2. I opened her bedroom door, and there was she sound asleep. So I walked down the corridor to the kitchen to get a snack, and there she was, back turned, kind of swaying slightly from side to side. I said, "Mom?" Then she turned slowly. All of a sudden, my ears picked up. It sounded like I was underwater. My body was paralyzed, and I had absolutely no control over it. I couldn't yell, I couldn't scream. All I could manage was a pained moan. Time seemed to slow down to a crawl. There were whispers. Then my sister walked in and saw me on the floor. To me, she looked all distorted and evil. To her, I looked like I was dying. She screams. My dad runs in, says a few words, and it was over, as if nothing happened. I lay on the floor, half crying, half screaming, when I got my breath back. Apparently, it's called an aviation. I reckon it was just stress-related, but shit's scary nonetheless. Alright, it's time to tell the tale. This happened to my very best friends in Vancouver a few years ago. Thanksgiving was a merry affair. We are from a smaller town, and about 15 of us had gathered in Vancouver somehow, and we had a huge feast. Got plastered, sang songs, danced the night away. By 3 a.m., everybody expected the people that live there, 3 males, 2 of them were on dish duty. My buddy Tom, doing dishes, said he needed to piss. He went to the next room and instantly passed out on the couch. In the back of his head, he heard a smash and some shouting. He was woken up by something hitting his ankle, then his knee in fast, violent succession. At first, being drunk, he thought it was an angry John, the guy doing the dishes, so Tom said, "Cough, his hole," and rolled onto his stomach. Then he was hit again a few times in the legs. It was at this point he noticed the 7 pain from the blows. He was being hit with a hammer. When he rolled over and opened his eyes, there were 4 people in gas masks, 2 with guns, 2 with hammers. One of them was hitting John up, unconscious, and with his eye hanging out of his socket. Swear to God. One masked figure yelled, "Where's my money? And where's Joseph?" Tom said he didn't know what he was talking about, and they had moved into the house only weeks before, and nobody in the house knew a Joseph. They told him to fess up before he ended up like his friend. Not knowing what to do, he said, "Let me show you my license," and tried to reach for his wallet. One of the guys with the gun then put the revolver in Tom's mouth and said, "Okay, get your wallet. Then tell me where my money is." Tom pulled out his wallet and almost shot himself when he remembered his middle name just so happened to be Joseph. He explained it was a coincidence and begged for his life. One of the guys with the gun put him on his stomach and pinned him to the ground with the gun on his neck. During this time, Tom had a clear view of John's unconscious, eye-out-of-socket body next to him on the floor. The other guys searched the house, somehow didn't enter the room with the other sleeping dude, then left. They came back in and out the screen door from the deck. This is without a doubt the worst thing I know of that has happened to somebody I know. They're all alive. I get emotional thinking about it. When John finally woke up in the hospital over a week later, he was so high on painkillers that he asked if he had been in a longboarding accident or something. His eye and part of his skull are gone forever. On the bright side, they replaced his orbital bone with Bengal tiger bone, so now he's part tiger. Close call for sure. One late night, my roommate and his girlfriend are doing it, and I decide I need to get out of the house. It's after 2 a.m., so I decide to drive to the casino, the only thing that'll be open. I'm driving on the freeway when I run over some large pieces of cement that had fallen from the overpass into the road, and I get a flat tire. I pull over on the side of the freeway to examine the damage. I'm getting the jack and spare tire out of my trunk. I wake up, and I'm lying on my back in the middle of the freeway. There are sirens, flashing lights all around. There are road flares surrounding me. A cop is shining his flashlight in my face. I ask what happened. He tells me, "You were in an accident." I ask him how long I was unconscious for. He tells me about a half an hour. I notice at this point that I'm about 30 or 40 feet from my car. They load me into the ambulance. They start cutting off my clothes, and I notice at this point that all my clothes are totally soaked in blood. The new white polo shirt I had just bought is now red with blood. My coat has a hole in it where I slid 30 feet on my side. I still have the coat. Maybe I'll take a picture. The EMS guy tells me he's going to give me something for the pain, puts a needle with morphine in my arm. I watch the plunger go down and I'm out like a light. I wake up for a second in an MRI or something, and a lady tells me to hold still. I fall back asleep and wake up in a hospital bed the next afternoon. Somehow I suffer no major injuries. Some lady plowed into the truck of my car, and my car hit me and threw me into the freeway. If she had hit me, I would have been crushed and most likely killed, since she hit my car going 60 or 70 mph. I don't know how you hit a car on the side of the road that has its emergency lights flashing, but whatever. Some people are R's, I guess. I do have occasional pains in my right leg. My car was totaled. The back axle broke off. The entire exhaust system, muffler, etc. broke off. Thank God no one was sitting in the back seats, because those were pushed into the front seats. But I feel really lucky because that same night, 2 other people died in similar accidents in Michigan. A friend of mine told me that one of her work colleagues was closing up shop alone one night. She goes to the car park and notices her passenger window has been smashed. A guy comes up behind her and says he's seen the whole thing, and if she drives him to the police station, he'll give a statement for her. She declines because he's quite creepy, and he gets really persistent, telling her his brother is a mechanic and he'll change her window no problem. Again, she says no and tells him politely to leave her alone. He carries on, and someone who works in the same area sees she's being hassled by this man, comes over and tells him to cough or he'll call the police. The guy laughs and leaves, still laughing. She drove straight to the police station and they inspected the car. They found a knife, some rope, and a bottle of vodka under the passenger's seat.